From fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada, this is Pod Therapy. Real people, real problems, real therapists. If you have any questions or advice to give, come on over to podtherapy.net and join the conversation. Because of Jim, we almost lost 2 listeners last week. That's 20% of our listeners. We'll address that and a whole lot more. And now, broadcasting from Level 9 Studios, that guy is Dr. Jim Jobin. I'm Nick Tangeman. It's time for some Pod Therapy.
The key word there, Nick, is almost. We almost did, but I called them both. And I apologized.
Yes. Well, one of them contacted me and let me know that there are other therapy podcasts out there.
Was that Ben?
Yeah. And I called his bluff. I was like, yeah.
Go find one.
Find one.
Yeah.
And then I said, no, wait, don't do it. Don't do it. I'm kidding. That. We're sorry. We're sorry.
We'll come back to you. Yeah. So welcome back, Ben. And the other one was Dawn. Dawn, that I got to tell you, that meant so much to me. She has earned president of the fan club in Nevada. Ben is president on the East Coast. But yeah, she messaged us on Facebook and she was like, hey, where's the pod? It's like Saturday. You guys usually do Therapy Thursday. And I was like, thank you so much for even noticing that it didn't go out. Yes.
It feels good to be missed.
It was, yes. So Jim does apologize. It was definitely Jim's fault. We are real-life therapists associated with other real-life therapists, and a team of real-life therapists in Phoenix needed me to go visit with them and try to help them work on something that was important and timely. And so, yeah, I was on a plane instead of editing this the episode that we had. So, but it did air. It was on swingers and open sexual relationships and all sorts of really interesting stuff and rave reviews. Even though it came out late, people really liked it.
Yeah, very risque.
Yes, it's very risque for the therapy podcast. Yeah, Ben, where are you going to get your fill of that, huh? Yeah, that's right. You're not going to hear that stuff on some other pompous therapy show. Talk about open sexual relationship. You're welcome. Okay, You'll keep coming back.
So we're back. And,
we're back.
Assuming there's no big issues tonight, hopefully we will get this episode out by tomorrow morning.
Yes, tonight. July 13th, 2019. I'm just hedging my bets, man. I put this out there with that date. People are like, wow, they're early.
Yeah.
Welcome from the future.
Exactly.
But thank you, loyal listeners, for sticking around. In fact, Nick and I looked back. This is episode 11, and we looked back over the last 10 episodes, and you know what? Thank you. Thank you for joining us. So many of you guys joined us in the last 10. Welcome to Pod Therapy. Welcome to this podcast. Nick, maybe we should reintroduce ourselves. You know, now that we're at the new set of 11 here, here we are starting it again. Yeah. Tell us about yourself, Nick. Introduce yourself to some of our new listeners.
Okay. Well, my name is Nick Tangeman. I'm
lies. Fake news.
I'm already off to a bad start. Originally from the Midwest.
Yes.
I'm an Iowa native. Yeah. Moved out to Las Vegas 6.5 or 7 years ago now. So my specialty is mostly in addictions. I have a master's degree in social work, but I've been working in the addictions field for 13 years now. So I've treated just about everything you can be addicted to.
Yeah, you actually have. Yeah. And you're on the cutting edge of some stuff like video game addiction, which a decade ago nobody was even talking about, and now it's part of the conversation. Yeah,
social media addiction.
Yes. Oh my gosh, Facebook
all
addiction.
That. It's
yes,
it's a growing field.
Yeah.
I've done clinical work. Mostly do administrative now. But. Yeah, that's me.
Yeah. It's funny when I think about Facebook addiction and stuff. I hold my phone so often that when I put it down, I feel like my hand is radiating energy.
Oh.
That's not good.
I thought you were going to talk about phantom phone vibration syndrome.
Okay. That's a thing.
Yeah, that's a real thing.
Oh, I believe it.
Yeah.
I keep my phone in my pocket, and so all the time I'll think that my phone has vibrated, but it's just my nerves.
Well, what it is it's an itch that gets interpreted by the brain as being the phone because it's used to the phone being there. So it feels like a vibration instead of
That's
an
terrifying.
actual itch.
That's terrifying and accurate. That definitely happens to me. I'm glad there's a name for it because I just thought I was going crazy. But hi, I'm Jim.
Yeah. Tell us about yourself, Jim.
Yeah, I wandered in from the street, and here I am bringing it back therapy style. I specialize in general mental health and also work in addictions. been here in Las Vegas for a really long time. I'm going to say something like 25 years or some odd thing like that. I work at a rehab, and I also have a private practice, and love Nevada, love therapy. And the reason why I got into this is just realizing there was a really interesting conversation to be had where people could really interact with some deep thinking. And a lot of folks had all these questions, and we thought, man, let's just start taking those questions and let's answer them together. And so we started this podcast January of this year, and it has been a smash hit. We are still the #1 therapy broadcast that records Wednesdays at noon. At specifically level 9.
At level 9 studios. Yes.
We're killing it, killing the competition. I like to think we scared the competition out of the water, Nick.
Right.
That's what it is.
Well, out of all the other therapy podcasts here, we're definitely doing better.
The best. So, we're setting the standards. So, thank you, listeners, for joining this conversation. And as Nick said in the intro, we are very big on you guys writing in, and you can do that anonymously.
You know what? I think the really interesting thing about that is that to us, like we come across questions every once in a while that like we don't think anything of because it's like this is just our regular day.
That's
and we don't
Tuesday. Yeah, exactly.
And so we're like, oh, are people really interested in this? So So yes, when you write in and you ask questions, we will definitely make a good effort
There's
to
not
get on
been
the
a
air.
question yet that we have not addressed, though there was one that we addressed it and then saved it in a bank episode. So, but
There's
even
been
in
a
that
couple,
case,
I think, that we did.
yeah, we have. We personally contacted those writers to say, here's actually our answer, just so you have it. So, yep, you have the Nick and Jim guarantee that if you send in a question to the show, it will be answered. And if you don't hear it the week you submit it, we will contact you and let you know why. But yeah, definitely send those in. You can go to podtherapy.net. You could submit it anonymously. You can comment and give advice on questions that other people asked in a given episode. You can comment right on that episode, and the writers can actually go on there and see what you thought and see what your perspectives are, which is strongly encouraged, guys. We want to create a culture and a community of conversation about uplifting and self-help and how do we all get through this together. So welcome to our new listeners, and thank you for the loyalty of our past listeners, and specifically Ben and Dawn. And some of you out there are wondering, how do I become the president of the fan club? Hey, guess what? Congratulations, you're the president of the fan club.
Just be loud.
Just be loud, man.
The squeaky wheel gets the grease.
That's right. They get all sorts of pull in Las Vegas because they know us.
All right. Well, let's get started.
Yes, sir.
So our first question, am I too focused on what other people think? I'm a man in my 30s. I care way too much about what others think. For instance, when it comes to dating, it seems I'm always wondering what other people think, friends, family, social media, etc. What they will think about my new girlfriend. Will they think she's pretty enough, smart enough, good enough? I feel I need to date beautiful women because it increases my social status, which is incredibly shallow, right? Or is that okay to consider? Anyways, great podcast. I've listened to all the episodes.
Wow. Woo-hoo. Hey, good. Thank you.
All right.
That's fantastic. Somebody actually listened to all of them. So, yeah.
I don't even do that.
I don't know. Neither have I. I edited them, and I don't. Even Scott, our engineer, is over there like, I know he's not. We're on mute. But no, that's a really good question. And one of the first things, Nick, that I see in that I actually think is a really interesting conversation is, okay, so listen, I want to date women as a social status symbol, and I realize that's shallow, but I'm specifically looking for pretty women, and I'm specifically looking for women that complement my status in the world. And here's kind of the irony of that. So I did my master's in marriage and family therapy, and one of the things we kind of got to study was, where did we evolve this idea of romance, and when did marriage become this thing that has mutual respect and like love and depth? That's kind of recent in human history, actually. Marriage as a concept only went to this romantic idea where it has to be mutually beneficial, like after the Civil War and like Jane Austen novels and stuff. So I actually take a pretty broad view of relationships. If you are open about this is why I'm dating you and like I specifically value this in you, I'm for it. I think that's fine. I think you can tell somebody, hey, I specifically really like, beautiful women that increase my status, and this can be a mutually beneficial relationship. There's a lot of relationships of convenience in the world, where they're clear. I'm married to you because you're, Jeff Bezos and like you have billions of dollars. And like, okay, I'm a trophy wife. Like, okay. And they're both completely fine with it. And the rest of us can laugh and say it's shallow and it's cheap. Fine, but at least they understand what their relationship is. They have an arrangement. They're okay with it. So my first answer to this guy when he says, is this okay? Yes, I think it's fine. I just hope you're being honest about it and like telling these women, hey, this is kind of what my value system is.
Okay, so I interpreted this completely a different way.
Okay.
I didn't read this and get the sense that that's his purpose behind dating. I got that he's dating, but as he's dating, this comes up. Oh. And it's like, I notice about myself that I worry way too much about what other people think.
Okay.
Are they going to think she's attractive enough?
Got it.
And that. So,
okay.
Excuse me, when I read this, that's kind of where my mind went. So I can relate to this. I think there was a period in my life in dating that I think everybody goes through this, where there is kind of a... It does kind of sound shallow, but I don't think it's really shallow, but there is kind of this idea or this concept that this is a reflection of who I am.
Right.
Right. So part of this,
I think that's true though. I do think that's true. Like if you are dating somebody who is a horrible monster of a human being, I kind of think less of you.
No. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a really interesting point. And I would agree with that as well. Not necessarily I think you're a horrible
only
person.
Quietly judge, though.
No, but that is actually a really good point because who we date is a reflection of where we're at mentally, emotionally, all of that. Mm-hmm. And so I guess that's where I would go with this question is I would encourage our listener to really kind of think about, how do you view yourself?
Yeah.
And how do you feel about yourself? What's your confidence level like? What's your self-esteem like? Because I know when I was dating with low confidence and low self-esteem, this was incredibly important to me because it was, again, part of my image. If my image wasn't coming from internal, it had to come from external, right? If I couldn't feel good about the way I am internally, then I had to have somebody very attractive that I'm dating that almost like I'm trying to convince myself, see, I must be good because I'm dating so-and-so.
I think that's true. And another thing that he says here is he worries too much about what other people think, and he references social media.
Yes.
So let me tell you something, an interesting dynamic that Nick and I have seen as therapists in the advent of the social media age. Depression is at an all-time high, and devastating loss of self-esteem is at an all-time high, almost exclusively because of Facebook and things exactly like Facebook, where people play the highlight reel and this false and exaggerated version of their lives. Like they're like, here's this amazing quiche that I made this morning. And it's like, wow, I ate Cheerios. Like I ate donuts and this guy made a quiche. Like, holy crap, like I am worthless. And it's like, that is an artificial reality. And you're just constantly bombarded with the 1,000 friends that you have, all of their best moments. And the guys who don't have a best moment today, they're quiet. And everybody else that had a best moment is there showing it to you. And your life by comparison looks like a joke.
Yeah, well, it's a recipe for depression. When you compare your backstage to somebody else's highlight reel.
Oh yeah,
you're setting yourself up for depression.
Absolutely. So to the writer, I hear you saying, "Hey, I think this is a distraction in my life. I tend to overfocus on others." I guess one of my first answers to you is, can we challenge the role social media plays? A lot of people become obsessive about it. And, here they are, they have to check these things all the time, and they're constantly checking their life status by the status update of somebody else. And I just don't want you to do that. So if I can challenge you to begin pulling back in that area, that's one thing. The question about, is this appropriate that I assign social status to the women I date? I'm fine with it. I don't think that that's inherently bad or inherently inhuman, even if it's a very, known thing that, I'm very shallow and I just want these women to sort of be part of my life because they're sort of an accessory and an ornament on my world. again, like, not to trivialize that, I'm actually comfortable with it as long as you're open and honest about, what your value system is and letting her see that so she doesn't think that it's more than it is. But yeah, to Nick's point, where he's kind of looking at this bigger picture of, how do you develop your own self-esteem? How do you self-assess? And if you can start with a pure and good and honest self-assessment, that will change some of that dynamic of how many voices on the outside you're seeking. And that self-talk is an important factor for rebuilding self-confidence.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, you can, absolutely. There's two different ways of looking at this. If you're looking at this, from the perspective of, I want other people to see my girlfriend or my spouse or my wife as beautiful, as funny, as intelligent. It's very important to me that other people see her this way because I see her this way, and I want all of them to see her that way too.
Right.
That, I think, is perfectly healthy.
That's pretty normal.
Yeah. I think it only becomes an issue if, like I said, you're using it as a reflection on yourself. Mm-hmm. That tells me that there's something more about yourself. And what you'll notice is that as you work on yourself and as you gain more confidence and more self-esteem, this becomes less of an issue.
Yeah, and I think that there's a little bit of another metaphorical truth to this. So my father used to have this saying, empty barrels make the most noise. And, those who don't have substance within them tend to be very echoing and make a lot of noise about themselves. We can also do this in visual ways. The way that we ornate ourselves and decorate ourselves, the things, the materials that we buy, the car that we drive, the watch that we wear, the girlfriend that we have, and the way that she appears in public. This can all be this effort to sort of distract from the emptiness inside of me. And so we're not accusing you of that, buddy. You're a listener to the show. Obviously, you have excellent and refined taste.
Of course.
Of course you do. So I think that we're just coming alongside you and saying, hey, you see this problem in your own life. It is a distraction to you. Good on you for having that discussion out loud. Good on you for writing in and asking, for some honest feedback. That, I think, is some of our feedback. And the next piece is, let's start doing some self-assessment. Let's start doing some self-talk. If you lost all of that tomorrow, what is the core nature of you? Let's discuss that. Let's raise your own awareness about that. Because I think if you can have a really robust understanding of who you are at your core, that will begin to filter out, and those external ornaments that decorate your life won't be as necessary to you. You may elect to still have them, but they won't feel like they're your identity anymore.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for writing in. This is a really good question.
Great question. And thank you for listening to all the episodes. And thank you for your commitment to listen to all the rest. Good listener there. Everybody should aspire to be like that gentleman. All right, next question. My sister is an addict and missed her court date. Should I turn her in? Ooh. Long story, but I will include the important stuff. Me and my sister were very close growing up. Around my senior year in high school, she began spiraling out of control with drug use. It's been 6 years, and I joined the military after graduating. She has been in and out of jail, and me and my wife stopped by my hometown on our way to our next duty station. I saw her about an hour ago, and she is very pale, skinny, sickly looking. I feel if I turned her in, she would be safer in jail and wouldn't overdose. Just the thought of me having to do this is killing me. But I don't know if this would be a temporary fix. I've tried yelling, consoling, motivating, pretty much every effing thing you can do with an addict in the past. But I don't know what else to do. Any advice?
This is a common one.
Yeah, it actually is. Very common.
Yeah. I've worked with a lot of family members. You have as well with, like doing interventions and things like that. And I wouldn't wish this on anybody. No. It's a tough situation to be in, to be a family member of somebody with an addiction.
Yes.
Because it's a no-win situation.
No.
My gut is saying, and my experience is saying, yeah, turn her in.
Turn her in.
Because having her in jail is better than having her dead.
Yeah.
And that, for a lot of family members, that's a real possibility if nothing happens and their addiction continues to spiral out of control. And let's face it, with our current situation with opiates, it doesn't take much to die. Nothing at all. So Yeah, I would say turn her in.
Yeah.
Feel confident in the fact that you're doing your best. There's no handbook for how to deal with this. There's no right or wrong way in how to deal with this. I think you just kind of have to go with what you think is going to be best.
Yeah.
Is she going to resent you?
Yes.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. She will absolutely resent you. She may not talk to you for a while. She may never talk to you again.
Yeah.
But even if that's the case, if it saves her life and it gets her off the street, that may not be a bad idea. Now, the next question, will it lead to change? Potentially. Actually, a lot of studies, this has been something that has been debated for a while. Does court-mandated treatment produce results? And actually, a lot of studies have shown that court-mandated treatment can be beneficial and can produce results. So even if it's because ultimately everybody who comes into our program, they're not there for the most part because they're really internally motivated. There's something that's driving them in there.
Exactly.
I always like to use the example of running because you're being chased versus running because you have a goal and a destination someplace you want to go.
Yeah.
Both of those examples are someone running.
Yeah.
The difference comes in what happens when the thing that's chasing you stops.
Yeah.
The one who's running because of fear will stop running.
Yeah.
The one who's running because they've got someplace they want to go, it doesn't matter what's chasing them.
Right.
They are internally motivated.
Yeah.
Every one of our clients that comes into the program, they're running out of fear.
Yes.
They're fear-based. So a big thing that we try to do when someone comes in is we try to change that motivation from fear-based motivation to rewards-based motivation.
Right.
I realize you got a lot of stuff to lose if you continue to use, but that doesn't keep anybody clean.
No.
Fear never keeps somebody clean.
No.
Because we have evolved the ability to rationalize and justify fear.
Yep.
Early human beings had to hunt animals that could easily kill them.
Mm-hmm.
We survived anyway.
Right.
Because we have that ability to be like, yes, this could, but I have to put fear aside. I got to eat.
Yes.
Right? This is a part of the brain that's it's very important. It's necessary for survival, but in addiction, it kind of starts to work against us. So we have to find something that gets them motivated about staying clean. Mm-hmm. So if you turning her in gets her into jail, gets her into court-mandated treatment, leave it up to the treatment provider to change the motivation to something positive.
So Nick's point is so spot on. And to the writer of this question, let me tell you something. That madness that you feel, I've yelled, I've consoled, I've motivated, I've offered rewards, I've threatened, nothing is working. That is normal for this disease. This disease has an insanity factor to it. There's a madness to it. And I have never seen anybody decide to get help because their life was going so great while they were using drugs or drinking. Nobody does that. Nobody comes to our rehab because they're winning at life. They come to our rehab because consequences found them.
Yeah.
And Nick's point is so on. Consequences save lives. And if you are a family member, or if you are an employer, or if you are out there and there is somebody that you are watching self-destruct in front of you and you're wondering, what do I do? How can I possibly help them? Allowing them to experience the consequences of their actions, getting out of the way as the bus of life is hurtling toward them, not yelling stop, not protecting them, allowing that to happen, and sometimes pushing them in front of it and letting that occur could actually save their lives. And so, we've seen a lot of people experience legal consequences because of this. Moms who have turned in children, brothers who have turned in sisters, husbands that have turned in wives. We've seen this kind of thing. Employers that have turned in staff, and people think, oh, it's none of your business. No, it's entirely your business. Mm-hmm. Now, Nick's point is still valid too. Once they get into treatment, yes, they might get in because they're trying to avoid pain. That's entirely fine. Nick and I don't care. Whenever we first meet them, we assess what's motivating them. And if they look at us and go, as soon as I graduate, I'm going to use drugs. I am only here to make this judge get off my back. Nick and I are going, great. Hey,
let's do it.
Let's pick it up tomorrow. Yeah. Fantastic. Let's help you get your goal done. Sounds like you need to complete this treatment so you don't go to jail. My job's to help you get to your goals. And our job is to be patient and with them in the truth until they can finally reach a place of being self-motivated, to want to do this for themselves. That's our job to solve. If you're a family member and you're experiencing the ocean of insanity, all we need you to do is get them into help. You are allowed to lie, cheat, steal. You can do whatever you want. You can trick them. We'll deal with it once they get in, okay? Mm-hmm. And they can resent you for the rest of their life, and may it be a long life of resentment. But that's what you're facing here today. Put her in chains to save her life. Absolutely. Don't hesitate.
Very good. Follow up with us.
Yes.
Let us know how this turns out.
Yeah. And if you need a referral, call us, man. Send us an email. We're at podtherapyguys@gmail.com. You can get a hold of Nick and I if you want some recommendations, treatment recommendations. Hey, can you help me find a rehab in my city and state or whatever? Yes, guys, we're here for you. Please reach out to us. We're happy to help.
Okay. Our next one has to do with depression, dealing with depressed mood. Hello, all. I've had problems with bad moods in the past, but I'm better now and more mature in that I know how to react better. As of Friday, however, I have been in a very isolated state of mind, which I cannot understand. I'm a college student and I live on campus. I feel like my life on campus is mundane and very lonely. I only live with 4 other people in my block, and they are all very antisocial. I tried to ignore it and even went out on Friday with some friends from a neighboring block, but as soon as I got home, I felt a bit low. It happened all weekend and is still happening. I just feel weird, not sad, not happy, just different, if that makes any sense. Any advice?
That's so common. That's so common. So a lot of people don't understand this because they see people in college and we associate that with National Lampoon movies, these guys that are all having a kegger and, in togas and laughing and carrying on and playing sports and living the dream, and they're youthful and they have all this energy and they're gorgeous. But the tragedy of college life that a lot of people don't understand is that it's actually deeply isolating. That is very common. And people don't think that. They think, oh, there's clubs and there's all these fraternities and sororities and you're meeting so many interesting people. It's not like that. And I think there's a huge culture shift for a lot of college freshmen when you come from high school where you're interacting with a new set of people 6 hours a day, 6 classes a day, constantly. You have no choice. Then you go to college and you're sitting next to somebody who shows up, opens their book, listens to the professor, and then runs the heck out of that entire campus as soon as it's done. And you don't see another soul on earth as you're walking back to your room, and you're sitting there and you have all this downtime and you have all this quiet time in your own head. And it's a very different dynamic. And a lot of times you're away from your own social support. You're not with your family anymore. You're not with your friends anymore. You're trying to redefine your identity. Mm-hmm. Nick, college is a terrifying and dangerous time for a lot of people.
Yeah, it absolutely can be. And it's even when you try to make an effort sometimes, which congratulations to our, that's one thing I want to say to our writer. You're making an effort. That's awesome. Keep doing it. Mm-hmm. Even if you don't experience positive results this first time, keep going. I'm thinking back when I first started college, your friends are usually the people that live in the same dorm as you, right? Kind of the same area. And I even had a lot of trouble making friends because I was playing hockey and we were gone every weekend.
Ironically. So here you are, you're doing an activity, that most people say, oh, good job. Yeah, get involved in a sport. That'll cure it. And it's no, I was actually more lonely because of the stupid sport.
And it took me away from that experience. But so you have to continue to make an effort. And, like I said, it's not going to pay off right away. It's not going to be something that you just, talk to somebody once and all of a sudden just hit it off. Keep making an effort, even if it feels pointless and futile.
Right. So two thoughts on this for the writer. When people use this word depression, this can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And I think as therapists, sometimes we're trying to understand what your version of this means. And if you're describing it as I'm lonely and I don't have interaction and I feel isolated, okay, so that's one version of depression that teaches us something, right? There's other versions that are chemical unbalances, right? And so we're curious about that. There's other versions that have to do with other problems in life or losses in life. Sometimes it's about trauma. Sometimes it's about the way that I'm thinking about my own humanity and my own value in the world. So there can be all sorts of versions of depression, and depression's become sort of a catch-all term. In your particular submission, there's a lot of language about loneliness. There's a lot of language about isolation. So obviously, as Nick and I read this, sure, we're tempted to give you suggestions about using meetup.com, to try to find some social groups that don't have anything to do with the campus, or trying to go to the commons and grabbing those little pieces of paper that are up on the post board that usually talk about, hey, there's a club or there's a meeting. And, sure, we're tempted to talk about branching out. But internally, the thing that I want to challenge you on is, as you're stepping into this new world, giving yourself permission to need to adapt to that new reality, and understanding that college life is a weird and funhouse mirror version of reality. It is unlike anything that comes in your life before it. It is unlike anything that comes in your life after it.
Definitely true.
And so it requires a very unique set of survival skills that you really have to adapt on the fly. So the first thing I think Nick and I are trying to say to you is we want to normalize this experience. You are not the only one going through it. Secondly, we want to encourage you. There's almost always going to be school counselors that are available on your campus. There's almost always going to be therapists that are part of the staff.
For free.
Usually for free. It's usually a benefit of what you get there. And we want to encourage you to go talk to them, because what you're going through is going to take some time. And I want you to have a reality check, an external voice that speaks to some of the experiences that you're having. I want to obviously encourage you to seek things like clubs. And my last piece of advice is also, don't be afraid to have a conversation with your family physician, with whoever your actual medical doctor is. Describe some of these symptoms. They may say that they'd like to try you on a low-dose antidepressant. There are worse ways to deal with depression than to allow a good doctor to prescribe a low-dose sertraline or something to that effect. Steer clear of Xanax, but you might want to try something like a sertraline that might take the edge off of this and bring you to a place where you might feel a little balanced. And the reason I bring that up is because in this late teen, early 20 stage of life, there's still a pubescent change that's happening in the body and in the mind. The human brain does not finish its development process until the mid-20s. And, for most men, it's not until about their mid-60s. So,
hey, now.
Hi-oh. So,
Shots fired.
Shots fired. So, don't be afraid to allow a physician to prescribe something to you. Some medicine actually might be valuable here and might be warranted.
Well, and one other thing to consider is that this is something to really kind of take a look at, because at this age, this is where we do see mental health symptoms really kind of start to pop up. And this is where the age which, a lot of people get diagnosed for the first time for mood disorders.
Yes.
So that'd be something to consider. This is the onset.
Too. Yeah, early 20s, Nick, you're right. That's whenever we see the majority of mental illness beginning to surface. So if you're out there, beyond even this writer, if you're in college, really attend to your mental health, guys. And if you're seeing symptoms, log them, journal them, report them to a therapist, to your counselors, to a physician, because if there are any mental illness symptoms, this is where we're going to discover them, and we'd like to treat them early rather than let you suffer.
Absolutely. Yeah, get on this right away.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great question. Thank you so much for writing in. All right, Nick, our next one. Tips to help with Facebook addiction.
Oh, look at that.
That's crazy. I totally was talking about that. Oh, I could have written this one. Tips to help with Facebook addiction. So basically, I'm a Facebook junkie and I want to cut down, but can't stop completely because of work and personal reasons. How can I cut down? I'm pretty obsessed and I hate it. Oh, man. Can relate.
Yeah. This is something I think a lot of us can relate to. And we were just talking earlier about, the link between social media and depression and how these two are very well connected. And the other thing, too, is I think one of the things that's interesting about when we talk about like social media addiction is really what we're kind of talking about is the neurotransmitter dopamine, is the feel-good neurotransmitter. And what we know is that research indicates that when we're in a conversation and we're talking about ourselves, there is a greater release of dopamine than when we're talking about the other person or a neutral party or something else. Mm-hmm. In regular conversation, talking about ourselves consists of, I can't remember the numbers exactly, so don't quote me, but it's somewhere like 10 to 20% of regular conversation is self-focused, as opposed to social media, which is almost 80 to 90%.
Right.
Think about all the stuff that you post,
Right.
all the stuff that you tweet about. It's almost always about us,
Right.
or it's our reaction to something that's in the news or something that's happening. It's all like, hey, look at me.
Yeah.
Don't forget about me.
Don't forget about me. Yeah.
And
Like
so-
we're all sitting around going, gosh,
Right.
what does Nick think about the Secretary of State stepping down? Like, the world needs to know.
Yeah, in case anybody was wondering,
In
here's
case
my
anybody was
thought.
wondering.
But that's the thing that makes it very addicting, right? I mean, that's that release of dopamine. It's like, and you have the other part of this too, is you have a guaranteed audience.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You know, it's right there, and it's easy, and it's so accessible.
Yes. I think for me, Nick, so I think I struggle with this too. And I know for me personally, my version of this has actually been a mere reflection of what you just described. So I think for most people, it's the self-focus. It's me putting out into the world about me. For me, I don't post very much about me, but I really like what's called lurking. So lurking is whenever you're constantly renewing your feed and you're watching what other people are doing and you're joining, these threads of conversation and you're looking at the comments. And there's a meme of like Michael Jackson in the 80s eating popcorn and smiling, like that's me. I'm that guy that's like, what's going on today on Reddit? And like I really struggle with it because it's almost like this rapid fire succession of topics. And I think what this is what's happened to me personally, speaking just for Jim, my attention span and my brain rate has moved into such a new place. Like I need new information quickly. I grow impatient and really bored really fast. And I've become dependent on this mechanism, this phone, and its many apps that move at lightning speed and have so much information to kind of keep me entertained. And so for me, the reason I realize it's a problem is the same reason that anybody addicted to anything realizes something's a problem. Your wife yells at you. So that happened to me. She's like, hey, would you put that thing away and like focus on us? And I'm like defensive. Like, what are you talking about? It's not a big deal. No. You guys aren't talking, so why can't I check it? And I realized, wow, if there is 5 seconds of silence, I feel the need to dive back into this machine and zone out and go into the trance. And that realization was like, man, I need to start putting some distance between me and my device. So I started plugging it in when I get home and making sure that charging station is in another place. It's on ring. I can hear it if the phone rings, but it's away from me. And I'm reassuring myself, like, it's okay, Jim. It's okay. You're just charging your phone. You need to charge it. And but that was enough for me to like break away. And I would promise myself I'm not going to, look at it until my kids are in bed. And that way I can kind of focus on my family.
Yeah. And what you're really referring to here is dependence. And how do we know when we're dependent on something? You take it away.
Right.
And you see what happens.
Right.
So in addictions treatment, we talk about the biopsychosocial model of addiction.
Right.
So if we're talking about biology, you take it away, and how does your body respond biologically? So like with alcohol, you're going to start to experience withdrawal symptoms if your body is dependent on it.
Yeah.
Psychological, what do you experience when you take it away psychologically? Well, we start to experience cravings, rapid thoughts.
And I do. Like my craving would be boredom. That's how my craving manifests.
And preoccupation.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Agitated, want to know what's going on, feeling like I'm out of the loop, wondering if something's big's happened in the world and I don't know.
Right. Yeah. And social would be how does your social life, how is that affected when you take it away?
The writer said, I kind of can't cut it out completely because of work and personal reasons. That's a good point, Nick, because actually now Facebook and social media, it might be irresponsible to just destroy it and throw it away completely because you actually do need it to some extent to interact with some of the people that matter.
I have cousins who I only know when they have a child because it's on Facebook.
Yeah. No, that's true. That's true. That's really important.
Yeah,
And,
whenever
like,
I go home for Christmas, there's always like a few new babies around. I'm like, who's
Whose
this?
are these?
I don't...
You have to go back to Facebook really quick and figure out who belongs to who, and like sit there holding it up next to the kid's face and match them up, positively ID them. But it's true, Nick, because like if we didn't use social media, the world would be deprived of our podcast and being updated as far as when we're doing it.
Tragedy.
We can't allow that, Right. So we definitely have to negotiate this space that the social media technology shouldn't be abandoned and discarded completely, like one might discard heroin and they can just go abstinent for the rest of their lives. But negotiating how I allow this to have an intersection with my story to the place where I'm not, as Nick said, dependent on it, or it's not having an outsized influence on my mind, my brain real estate, my hours of the day. So speaking only for myself, one way that I addressed this was I divorced myself of the object. So social media exists inside of my personal phone. I would make that object go to a timeout. And so that object was not in my possession for periods of time in my evening. And that allowed me to begin to start tiptoeing away. Right. And it was an odd and weird situation, man. And it's something I had to train myself to do. And I had some family accountability because my wife was like, hey, I need this thing to go away so you can focus on the kids. Even if you're just sitting on this couch and there's nothing going on and you're watching our daughter color, that is called being a father.
Yeah, being
just
present.
do that. Just be present. And I had to relearn how to do that mentally, how to be present.
So here's my idea. And I this is not an original idea, but I'm going to take credit for it.
Most of your ideas aren't.
Very true. Sad how true that is. All of these things are available on a computer. Mm-hmm. They don't have to be accessed on your phone.
Yeah.
Delete it from your phone.
Yeah.
That's what I would challenge you to do. If
point.
you and this is one of the things that we talk about, in addiction is if you want to distance yourself, then it's up to you to create as many roadblocks as you can between you and that thing.
Good point.
Make it difficult for you to access it. Mm-hmm. So, you're saying that you need to have this for work and personal reasons. So if it's for work, make it accessible on a computer.
Right.
Delete it from your phone, and at least that way you have to get up. You have to go to the computer. You have to log in.
Yeah.
Put some roadblocks in there.
That's such a good point. And ironically, that is something that I've done recently. Specifically and only with Facebook. And I was telling you about this at lunch today, that Facebook, the app, installed 3 extra Facebooks or something, these weird sidecars into my phone. And my phone was moving really slow. And I'd read something online and said, hey, if you delete this, watch what happens. So I deleted Facebook. And all of a sudden I had a new phone. And I was like, whoa. And I was so resentful that I was like, I'm not reinstalling it. Screw you, Facebook. So I haven't done it out of spite. But it's there if I want it at a computer. And so I will check it occasionally, see what's going on with my family, but I don't use it as much. Now I just need to get rid of the other 99 social media things I'm addicted to, but one step at a time, right, Nick? Progress, not perfection.
Progress, not perfection. So yes, but good for you for at least recognizing that it's a problem and wanting to do something about it.
Yeah.
Unless you do something about it, it's going to get worse, not better.
Yeah, and one last note on this, Nick. If you're addicted to something, like Facebook, there's an approach to this called harm reduction, right? And so if you can't quit it completely, here's what I need you to do. I need you to go to facebook.com/podtherapy, and I need you to share everything we have, okay? I need you to comment on every single episode and just review the pod. I need you to share it with all of your friends. I need you to private message all of your friends and share the pod and tell them, hey, man, I really think this applies to your life. Let's harness that addiction for good. If we can't beat it, let's at least put it to use for the global wellness.
The word, I think the phrase you're looking for is exploit it.
Yeah. I mean, tomato.
Right. Thank you for writing in. That was a really good question.
Thank you.
All right. Our next one has to do with communication in relationships. Lately, my boyfriend and I have been fighting more often than not because I have really terrible communication skills. What are some tips for improving communication in relationships?
Sign language. That helps.
Does it? I'm going to challenge you on that.
Yeah.
And one of the things that she talks about here is that, she personally admits I have really terrible communication skills.
Right.
So I actually do a group therapy process on communication skills. And one of the things that we really try to focus on is looking at how predictable communication actually is. Yes. And let me provide you an example. I'm sure every one of our listeners can think of two people they know that always seem to get into arguments.
Right.
And you can imagine what one person says, and before person B has a chance to respond, you know what they're going to say.
You know what they're going to say.
And then before A can respond to person B, you know exactly how A is. It's a dance, and it's just like a waltz, and every step is very, very, very predictable. And these people aren't special. You do that too. I do that too. We are all very predictable in our communication. So when we get into an argument or a heated discussion, the other person already knows, for the most part, how we're going to respond to something. They are preparing themselves. One of the best things to do is to be unpredictable.
Yes.
Right? And to change it up, to kind of so keep them on their toes a little bit.
Yes.
You know? The other thing that I really like to focus on too, when having having a discussion about communication, dialogue is very important. It doesn't really become an argument until we try to win. If we are trying to find a solution together, and I'm interested in what you have to say, and I want you to be interested in what I have to say, that's good. That's healthy. That's communication. But when it becomes a problem is when one of us tries to establish dominance over the other. And it's amazing how we can do this in so many subtle, subconscious ways that we aren't even aware of, right? And the most common example that I can think about is interrupting.
Yeah.
Right. So if I'm interrupting,
what I think, Nick, is
perfect.
Should I let you?
Very good. No. That was perfect.
Demonstrate it?
Thank you, Jim. Thank you. So being able, cutting somebody off, that is establishing dominance.
Right.
Because what is the message you're sending? You're sending,
your thought doesn't matter.
I'm done. Listen to you. Listen to what I have to say, because what I have to say is more important. And there's a lot of things that we do that establish dominance that we don't think of as being establishing of dominance.
And to add to that, Nick, I'm going to throw two therapeutic pieces of homework to these people. Okay, so Nick, one thing I thought would be kind of neat for you and I to do is to demonstrate a listening skill that we actually make a lot of our patients do, which is the when you say, I feel when you say, remember that? Like, I feel X when you say Y in situation Z, and then the other person has to say the whole I hear you saying. So here's a trick that Nick and I will do with a lot of couples. Whenever we're working with people and we want to try to reblend their communication skills, Nick's right. Sometimes it's a dominance problem. Sometimes it's a winning problem. A lot of times, too, the other big culprit is a misunderstanding problem and a failure to be curious about what the other person's saying. And they give you 10% and you assume the other 90%, and now you're running off in the wrong direction. And a lot of times, most fights that I see in couples are not even about the topic. You're fighting about fighting. Like 90% of the time, you are fighting about the fighting. It's about the thing you said in the last sentence, not what this whole conversation started about. I'm not mad about what you did. I'm mad about how you said it, or whatever. And like, that's the common problem. So one thing that Nick and I will do for homework is we will challenge couples to actually practice a training wheels approach to rethinking about how they have their fight and how they have their conversation. So we're going to role play that real quick. Let's name this couple. Okay, so we don't have a name on this one, so I think it should be Ken and Barbie. Okay, I'm going to be Barbie, and I think you should be Ken. Yeah, I'll do it. Since I have the long flowing hair, I'll be Barbie, you be Ken. But Ken, I'm angry at you because you after work you go get a beer with John, your buddy, and you don't call me. You don't see if I want to have dinner. You don't even check to see if I'm going to do anything, and it's always happening. Is ridiculous.
Barbie.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing you say is that I don't communicate with you enough. I don't check in with you enough, and I think you're saying that you're starting to feel neglected or unimportant.
Yeah, that is what I'm saying, Ken. But no, okay, so notice what Nick just did. Nick rephrased what I said back to me, okay? That we call that reflection. So instead of taking it and responding to my allegations, instead of giving an excuse or context or a reason or rationale, he forewent all of that and he made sure he has the message clear. He started with understanding. Hey, I think I hear you saying the following. And he rephrased it in a fair way. He didn't minimize it. He didn't mock it.
Right.
Another technique is to say, I feel when you in this situation. So a way that Barbie would be trained to retalk. So we would challenge Ken to summarize like you just saw Nick do. And now what Barbie would be redoing is the therapist would say, okay, Barbie, here's how I want you to say that whole thing over again. I want you to say it in 3 sentences. I feel emotion word when you action word in or during situation. And so, okay, I would practice that. And I'd say, okay, Ken, I feel unimportant, okay, or I feel diminished when you don't check with me before you make plans after work. That is a very neat and tidy information package that you have wrapped up, you have made it clear, and now you've sent it to Ken. And ideally, Ken would receive that and say, Barbie, I hear you saying that you feel diminished when I don't check with you after work to see if you wanted to hang out or whatever. And that's a complete message set. Now there's no misunderstanding. We're on the same page. It's slower. It's confusing. A lot of people feel like, well, that's like really nuanced and really babyish. And,
right.
I just kind of want to fly off the handle and get into a fight. I'll bet you do. But as therapists, we're going to interrupt that and we're going to try to remodel how we even have conversations in the first place.
And this, I've gone over this with a lot of folks, and it is the response that I usually get is, oh my God, do I really have to do this? This is so cheesy.
Yeah.
But do you want the relationship to work or not?
Do it my way. Your way wasn't working. Now we're doing it my way.
It is a highly effective way of communicating, and it knocks out 90% of the issue, which is usually just complete misunderstanding about what we're talking about.
Yes.
So it really definitely works. And I think, the other thing too, getting and giving and asking for feedback.
Yes.
Right. And asking for clarification. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm hearing you say this. Is that what, when you say it this way, it makes me think that this is what you're saying. Is that what you mean?
Yes. Checking.
Give the other person the opportunity of saying, yeah, you got it. Or no, that's not at all what I meant.
Right.
And then you give them the opportunity of rewording it and rephrasing it into a way that is, that will make sense. Yeah. Now, the big challenge is to do it without sarcasm.
Yeah, yeah.
You have to be honest about it. You have to be sincere about it. You cannot put sarcasm in this and expect that this is going to work.
That's why it's nice to have a therapist, because they kind of referee that. They'll make sure the person doesn't mock it. Yeah. But even if they're mocking it and you're both able to laugh at it, we're fine with it because you're fighting less. And like one more intervention, Nick, that I'll throw out there that I've done with patients before when I work with couples, one of the very first things is remodeling the way we talk. Sure, that's what we just demonstrated. Another intervention that I've done in the past is something called an interference pattern. Interference patterns are really fun, and it's something that I like to use a lot. Very few therapists do it because you get called a quack, but I'm totally cool with it. I don't care because I think it's really cool and it's really effective. So an interference pattern is whenever I figure out what you're doing and then I add or take away something to that situation to just make it weird so that it's harder to do that naturally. So here's an example. I had a couple that same situation. They were fighting furiously and they would just have these knockdown, drag out fights. I tried to remodel how they talk to each other. That didn't work for very long. It was like a Band-Aid on a broken pipe, just eventually it all spilled out again. And so I was like, okay, where do you guys fight? And they're like, in our living room, in our kitchen, usually. I said, great. Okay, I can't stop you guys from fighting. You're not going to listen to my rules. So I'm going to make one rule. I only have one rule. If you follow one rule, I'll leave you alone. And they're like, all right, what's your one rule? And I was like, the only way you're allowed to fight is if you are standing on chairs. That's it. That's my only rule. I'm like, well, how's that going to fix anything? I was like, I don't know. But at least if you're going to, you may as well stand on a chair. It's just as pointless on the floor. And they were like, is this a metaphor? Is this and I was like, no. No, it's not a metaphor. Literally, pull out your kitchen chairs, stand on them, and then have it out. But if you get down from the chair, you're not allowed to continue fighting. The rule is you have to ascend to the chairs in order to have the fight. So if you need to take a potty break or whatever, as soon as you step down from that chair, the fight's on pause. You guys will have to come back to it when both of you can be on the chairs, right? And they were like, all right, so they followed my rule. And this is an interference pattern. So what I'm doing is I'm bringing your awareness to the silliness of the fight by putting you in a weird, unexpected, silly position where you don't just naturally get to go back to your old habits. You now have to analyze them and you have to put some effort into it. It's like how Nick talked about me putting my phone away and making a computer the way that I get on social media. He's creating an interference pattern to force me to go an extra step before I go back to a habit. And so I'm forcing you to take one extra step to do something that's weird weird and annoying before you're allowed to partake in your fight. And ideally, that causes this interruption in your pattern. And I've seen couples that have I had one couple, I was like, "Did you guys fight as much this last week as you did the week before after we did the chair thing?" And they said, "No." And I was like, "Why is that?" And they're like, "Our legs hurt." Like, we finally decided, let's call a peace so we can go sit down.
And that's great, right? That's great, because what they're doing is they are making a judgment call and saying, do I want to do this? Is it worth it?
Right.
It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
I guess it's not. If it's not worth me standing on a chair, I guess it's not worth me addressing.
Yeah, and that was the only rule, and they lived by it. And Nick, we could do a whole show on interference patterns because they're one of my favorite things to do. I had another couple that was fighting, and I tried the chair bit, and they were like, "No, we're not doing that," just because it wasn't an ideal situation for them physically. So I said, "Okay, that's cool. Tonight, I want you guys to go buy bubble gum. And I want you to get like Bubblicious bubble gum. And the only way you're allowed to fight is if you go get the gum and you're both chewing and popping bubbles during the fight. And that's the only way. And if it loses its flavor, go get another one. But you have to have that be popping bubbles and chewing at all times." And it was just, again, an interference play to try to get them to, at least do something differently. If you're going to do it anyway, allow me to have you do it slightly differently.
Right.
Let's just see what happens. And like a lot of the time, just playing with that, just changing the dynamic is exhausting. And they're like, "This is stupid. Let's go spit out our gum and watch Netflix." Yeah. It's like, okay, cool. And that we may not have permanently solved the issue of couples fighting for the rest of humanity and the rest of all time, but we've interfered and made a little bit of progress, not perfection, in this one relationship. So try those ideas. I think it'd be interesting to see how it works.
The last thing that I would kind of piggyback off of that is a little bit of self-awareness goes a long way.
Yes.
Understand when your optimum time is for having serious discussions, and plan that out in advance. So in a relationship, my significant other knows when my optimum times are to have a serious discussion and when are the bad times to have a serious discussion. If I haven't eaten, that's a bad time, because that's just, I know that's a weak moment for me.
Yes.
Right. If I'm well rested, 2 hours before bed, that's my ideal time, my optimum time. That's when I feel most present. I'm calm. I can communicate effectively. Know when your time is. Share that with your significant other. Plan your arguments. Yes. Accordingly.
Plan your arguments. Actually, that's another intervention we did at one point, was it gave people a schedule and said, okay, so when can we make time to have this fight? And the rule was they weren't allowed to say a word about the fight until that time. And it was only budgeted for like 30 minutes. So they both pull out like essays of things they wanted to yell at the other person about. And they're just like spraying it, trying to get it all out there. Like, how much time do we have? 5 minutes. Okay. What else? Then like time's up and they're like, okay, let's go get dinner. Like a whole nother way to do it. Great question. Right. And please let us know which one of those wonderful interference patterns you've selected and tell us how it worked out.
Yeah, we'd love to hear back from you.
All right, that's all the time that we've got for this week's session. Thank you to those who contributed to our show today. We really appreciate it. Remember, pod therapy isn't something you should keep all to yourself. Help us reach others by sharing this episode. You can find us at facebook.com/podtherapy or on Twitter @podtherapyguys.
Do you want to add your own advice to today's questions? Post your thoughts at podtherapy.net and join the conversation. I'm Nick Tangeman.
I'm Jim Jobin.
Thanks, and we'll see you for your appointment next week.